Seated near the fire at 221B Baker Street in the heart of London, Dr. John Watson, M.D., shifted in his chair. He glanced over to where his friend, the master detective Sherlock Holmes, sat, unmoving, his concentration totally directed toward their guest. This visitor, Dr. Mortimer, began to tell Holmes and Watson why he had come. As physician and friend to the late Sir Charles Baskerville, I was bound to say after his death that he had died of heart failure, which, strictly speaking, was true. Sir Charles had suffered from a weak heart for some time, but what I did not reveal during the inquest was that I believed his heart attack came about from terror. And now his heir, his nephew Henry, is arriving in London from Canada, and I worry a similar fate awaits him. The tall, slender figure in the chair to the left withdrew the pipe from his mouth. "You interest me, Dr. Mortimer," said Sherlock Holmes. "Pray continue." "Well, Mr. Holmes, Baskerville Hall has been in that family since medieval times. Sir Charles spent much of his youth there before he went off and made a fortune in business. But he never forgot Baskerville Hall, and he knew that most of the nearby tradespeople and farmers depended upon it for their living. He felt responsible for them, and he determined that when he inherited the estate, he would live there. Still, we offered a limited circle of educated individuals to such a worldly man as Sir Charles. The nearest village, Grimpen, where I live, is nearly 5 miles from Baskerville Hall, while the next nearest sign of civilization is hardly a desirable one, Princeton Prison, 14 miles across the moors. But Sir Charles wanted isolation, for he knew too much excitement might be dangerous to his heart. "A very sensible patient," offered Dr. Watson. "Yes, except for one matter that increasingly took hold of his mind." "And that matter was?" "The family curse." "Ah, Watson, I had hoped for something more original. One sometimes wonders if there is a noble family in England that does not claim to be haunted or cursed." Watson smiled, and seeing this, Dr. Mortimer remarked, "You may laugh, gentlemen, but I'm confident that Sir Charles Baskerville's belief in this curse, if not the curse itself, killed him, and there are factual data to support the existence of the Hound." "The Hound?" "Yes, the Hound of the Baskervilles." Holmes and Watson exchanged glances and sat back to listen. Back in the 1600s, the occupant of Baskerville Hall was Sir Hugo Baskerville, a savage, violent man. He had set his eye on the beautiful daughter of one of his neighbors, but she, knowing his reputation, refused him. But Sir Hugo was not a man to respect a woman's wishes. One night, when the lady's father and brothers were gone from their house, Sir Hugo rode over and carried her off to Baskerville Hall, locking her in an upstairs room. He spent the night drinking with his evil friends and bragging about what he'd done. Meanwhile, the desperate lady climbed down the ivy on the outside of the house and ran off across the moor towards home. Later, Sir Hugo discovered her gone, and swearing the devil himself might have his soul if he didn't have her back that very night, he shouted to his servants for his horse and his hunting dogs. Offering the dogs a scarf the lady had dropped so that they might sniff its scent, he and the dogs set out on her trail. His friends, realizing the dogs might kill the woman, quickly rode after. 10 minutes later they came upon a shepherd. He had not seen the young lady, but he had seen the dogs and Sir Hugo go thundering by. And, he said, hot on Sir Hugo's heels ran a huge, baying hound, coal-black, yet glowing in the darkness. Hurrying on, the men found the young woman, dead from fear and exhaustion. But there also lay Sir Hugo Baskerville, lifeless, and looming over him stood a monstrous black hound, larger than any earthly dog, and glowing in the darkness. It raised its head and growled so viciously that the riders rode off in terror. Indeed, one of them died that very night from the shock. Sherlock Holmes commented, "Were I a collector of fairy tales, this might interest me. But you spoke of facts." "You needed to hear this first. Here are your facts." For more titles from Jim Weiss and Well-Trained Mind Press, please visit us at jimweiss.com or welltrainedmind.com. Thank you for listening.